What to do after a catastrophic loss in trading or investing. Now, this could be with leverage, this could be with spot. This is really for anyone who's taken an absolutely monstrous loss. And this video is being recorded on October the 12th, 2 days after perhaps one of the worst days, particularly for the altcoins in the crypto market. Bitcoin did have a pretty nasty down day as well. But just for reference here, this is what we saw on Bitcoin. And of course, when we go to the altcoins, they got absolutely massacred on Friday, the 10th of October. If we go over here to something like Dogecoin, this thing went down, about 50%. If we go to, another sort of higher cap altcoin like AVAX, again, something down 50+% in a very short amount of time. XRP, same thing over here as well. And there are many, 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 many more such cases that we have seen on that date. It was a historic day, not necessarily for Bitcoin, but certainly for altcoins, which did lose tremendous amounts in short amount of times, which did create massive leverage cascade fallings that wiped people out, and there's many stories of this. There's many stories of this because realistically, no one can survive on leverage holding a position when you're down 50% in, less than half of an hour, maybe even less than that, maybe in like 10 minutes or so is what the whole move amounted to, even on 2x leverage, you are going to be wiped out on that. So I wanted to create a video to address the situation because it's a very, very common situation. Everyone I know, myself included, who has done trading over a long enough period of time has at least one story of a major blow up that brings you from, something that was very respectable, at least for your current situation, to zero or near zero, or maybe even negative. But I wanted to record a video here, particularly speaking to these people from my own experience and what I've learned from these sort of blowups, and also the roadmap that we can use, at least that I've used, to build my way out of there to get back and, in my case, exceed those earlier levels significantly more. And I believe that anyone can do this. It is going to be perhaps the hardest thing that you ever do in your life. It's certainly been it for myself. So I don't want to sugarcoat this. I don't want to make this Pollyanna and say that this is, this is a great thing. This is amazing. This is your chance. No, it is not. It is a potential opportunity for some people, absolutely, and it can be the best event in your life. However, it is not guaranteed to without significant amount of work. So I want to provide the roadmap in this video, and realistically, this is a roadmap to help you rebuild stronger, not despite the loss, but because of it. We're going to use it. We're going to use it for the future. So we'll move on from here, and I want to first define what a catastrophic loss is. We're going to define that as a life-changing incident in trading or investing, in which the loss incurred has a significant impact on your immediate financial position. That means immediately your life is changed because of this loss. It is so big, it is so great that that your life is now altered quite literally in a very, 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 very clear way. And it will also alter your ability to maintain your current lifestyle. That is more or less the definition that we're going to be running off of. And I'll share my own experience with this as well. And I'll say, I had my own experience more than 10 years ago now where I went fully broke. I was at the time, a relatively new trader within my first few years of trading. And again, I'd come up in a family of traders, come from a long line of traders. No, my father was a trader, and I've been learning the business ever since I was about 10 or 11, going down to the floor of exchange. The exchange. When I got out of college, I went back to the floor of the exchange, started learning how to trade, and I was getting tutelage from some of the most long-term trading traders that exist, at least on the West Coast. And from there, I grew an ego that I believed, I was basically couldn't be hurt, couldn't be wrong. And over the course of about a month and a half, I made several trading decisions that took me from something at the time. I think for the first time in my life, I'd made over like $100,000. It was somewhere around there. And it took me down to zero. And in fact, it didn't even just take me down to zero. It took me down to negative amounts because at that point I had to take on loans. I had to take on credit. I had to take on, all sorts of things just to make ends meet, like to quite literally buy food. I mean, for myself, that was very cheap. I was eating actually only ground beef and some ketchup as well at the time. Wasn't fully keto at that point. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Eggs and ground beef. Very, very cheap, very, very effective. And honestly, I still eat it because honestly, I like it. I'm not even joking. I really do. Anyways, Every trader and investor faces pain. Pretty much everyone I've known, whether it be in a professional trading venue when I was an actual market maker authorized trader on the floor of New York Stock Exchange ARCA, or of course in the crypto space, everyone I know who has been there for a long amount of time has at least one story of blowing up. And particularly for those very successful traders, they will attest to this. And I agree with this as well. At least it's been my experience that event was the worst event of my life at the time, and looking back on it, it was simultaneously the most important event that led to positive change, that catalyzed positive change. So look, we all face pain. Sometimes not just bad trade, it's collapse that shatters who you thought you were. And that's really where a lot of the terrible stories come from, is that, people's identity gets wrapped up in their investments and in their net worth. And of course, these things can and will go away, and so we need to anchor our identity on something that's a little bit more stable in order to move forward. So let's move into the next one. And a catastrophic loss has the potential to completely reshape your life twice. The first change is the one that absolutely will happen. That is the immediate shock to your personal financial situation. That is, holy shit, how do I afford rent? How do I afford food the next day? That one is 100% going to happen whenever you experience one of these events. The second change, however, is a potential change. It's a potential change because it comes from that same very powerful stimulus of reaching more or less rock bottom that has the potential to shape your future. And how you use that stimulus will decide if the outcome is positive or negative in the long run. So again, I don't want to be Pollyanna with this. This is not a guarantee that things will be good for you in the long run. This is a potential because the stimulus is so large that it really has that really creates the opportunity to change yourself, because with very strong emotional events, our sort of psychology opens up to changing. Why does that happen? It's actually an evolutionary biology-based idea. Why? Because when we experience an extremely strong emotional stimulus, it's a signal to ourselves that what we are currently doing is not working, thus we must change. Without that stimulus, and going a little more deep into this, the human body, human psychology doesn't really want to change if it doesn't have to, because its primary goal is to just stay alive and basically reproduce. And if you're doing that, you don't even need to be reproducing. You just need to be fucking jacking off with your hand and getting enough food, which is not that difficult in today's day and world. Obesity is a bigger issue than starvation, at least in the United States and most Western countries. So you don't really have that stimulus to change usually. But with an event like this, it will certainly open up your emotions, if large enough. And that is where real change actually can occur. But we need to actually really be dedicated in how we try to, guide this change so that it doesn't become a negative thing and it can become perhaps the most positive thing of your life. So again, ultimately, if you want a positive outcome, this should be a time of deep reflection. And this is where the real hard work begins. Again, I don't want to be like one of these Pollyanna, channels that I see, with like positive quotes and shit like that, because it's fucking not in the moment, which really sucks. And I really do feel bad for a lot of the people who did get hurt on that October 10th dump. And if you've ever been hurt in the past, from these sort of activities as well. Anyways, let's go one more step deep into it. So the emotional fallout of facing reality. So let's go through the natural emotional sequence. This is more or less the process that we go through whenever we have one of these major life-altering events. And this can be, from like losing your first girlfriend or boyfriend, if you're of that persuasion, or if you're just female, you never know. Or financial, it could be many different things, maybe even losing a family member, something like this, a major loss, all has the same sort of emotional sequence, which is first denial. That is where you kind of try to just deny that it even happens, deny that's an issue. Then, after some time, for some people it's, maybe a few days, for some people it's maybe a few weeks, for some people it's maybe a few months, but you naturally move on to the next portion of the cycle, which is anger, which then leads into guilt, which then leads into shame, and then leads into numbness. So this is a natural process, and we expect to go through this. This is just the human condition after all. So don't be surprised to witness your own self going through this if you did incur a major loss. And I need to take a sip of this water because I'm damn thirsty right now. Oh, it's really, really good. Anyway, I got a fresh water filter right now, so it's really good, really, really clean. Anyways, we know from past videos in this series that highly emotional states, such as denial and anger, make it impossible to make logical decisions, as your brain is quite literally cut off from the logical portion, of that. So you cannot think logically during this time. So, just to be very blunt, if you are first experiencing this situation, the first thing you want to do is don't fucking trade. Don't fucking trade. Don't make any major decisions right now. Let yourself feel those emotions. That's okay. That's actually the best way and the fastest way to get over them. But certainly you do not want to be trading in this state, because you will be blocked off from your from your logical decision-making capabilities, and you will not be at your highest, your highest state. And I mean, do you think in trading or investing, you need to be in your highest state, or would you want to be in your highest state before you make any decisions? Yeah, fucking obviously. So I would strongly suggest to put down the fucking computer, put down your phone, for God forbid you're trading on your phone, and don't focus on that, at least for a couple weeks. Anyways, the only way to unlock the logical part of your brain is to actually process the pain. You actually have to go deeper into it. So this is where things start to get, it can get fucking dark, man. It can get very, very dark. Processing the pain will naturally take time and dedication. We'll go over this process a little bit more in depth later, and what that actually looks like. And of course, like I said, we will provide a roadmap as to how to work your way out, particularly in the sphere of of trading and investing. But you can apply this to many other things as well. Anyways. Also, because I'm a massive Carl Jung advocate or just fanboy, I do believe that this has a major tie-in, and I honestly just think that he's the most brilliant of all psychologists, and I would defer to him for basically everything. But basically, processing the pain naturally takes time and dedication. And the Jungian tie-in here is that you have to confront your shadow, is what he is kind of how he would put this. And the loss forces you to see the parts of yourself that you ignored. So your shadow is all of the things that you basically repress in your psychology. So this could be the hubris, this could be your greed, this could be your overconfidence or naivety, in the context of especially trading. A lot of it is overconfidence, a lot of it is certainly greed, and then there's definitely a degree of hubris and naivety as well. That's where a lot of this pain will come from. So confronting that and realizing that that is a major issue in our case. And I know this was it from myself as well, especially with overconfidence. Absolutely. That was very painful to admit and to work through. So what I will say is, don't rush to fix it. Instead, name what actually happened without moral judgment. That's kind of the key here. This may take weeks, and during this period, it is imperative to not take trades. I just want to repeat that again. Imperative to not take trades. Why? Because we are in a highly emotional state. In that highly emotional state, where you're basically in a fight or flight, state, we are going to be blocked off from our logical decision-making capabilities. We're going to be in an emotional state, and we're going to do probably more dumb stuff. Anyways, moving on from there. Just speaking a little bit more directly about taking time off, with that lovely image on the bottom right of a lady touching grass. I also got another image of a lady literally touching one blade of grass. I'm like, that's not it. That's not it. That's not what I'm going for. Anyways, taking time off. During the first 7 to 21 days, for some people this is a little bit more, for some people this is a little bit less, but it's usually around this period. You will likely be in a heightened state, in a heightened emotional state, I should say, akin to the fight or flight nervous system state. So that is when we're confronted with real fucking issues. This is a deep primordial portion of our brain that basically sees a threat or interprets a threat, and it puts you into full-on emotional state, giving you access to a lot of really useful things. Like if you're trying to run away from a fucking lion that's trying to eat you, it's going to start to upregulate all of your physical attributes in a way. It's going to allow you to kind of run a little bit further than what you probably would already be able to do. And maybe ignore some of those limits, but it's going to come at the cost of other things. That is our logical state. So, it kind of upregulates that portion and downregulates the other portion in order to help you survive. But our issue isn't running away from a literal physical threat. It's running away. It's going deeper into an emotional state. That's what it really is. So again, we know from previous videos that fight or flight state quite literally blocks your brain from access to the parts that are associated with logical thinking. Again, do you think you're going to make great decisions while in this state? Obviously fucking not. So we don't want to be making any other financial decisions in the state to compound our problems. Like, it's already bad enough. The worst thing you can do is just make it worse. That's always something that you can do, is just don't make it worse. Don't make it worse. You don't need to make it better. You just don't make it fucking worse at this point. We can try to make it better later on. That's the idea. But for now, just don't make it worse. Just don't make it fucking worse. Like, this is where revenge trading comes in, where people will take a big initial loss. And I know in my case, I took a big initial loss. Then I took out loans and got an even bigger issue. So I did not follow this process properly. This is what I wish I did, because could have lessened the blow a little bit more. Taking on loans, maxing out credit cards, these sort of things. Not ideal. Not ideal. Thus, like I said, it is imperative to not trade during this time. So what should you do? How can we get out of this state with the least amount of issues as fast as possible? That should be the goal. In my experience, and especially what I wish I would have done a little bit more of during this time, was to focus on supporting my physical body with all of the activities that it needs for optimal performance. Now, I was actually having a really good conversation yesterday with someone in the gym about this, and we were going over. And sorry, I should also qualify that this happened right after, the day after that October 10th meltout, and basically we were talking about how important it is to get back in the swing of things, get back in touch with your physical body. Because when you are not respecting yourself, and not setting yourself up to at least at the minimum do all of those things that your physical body needs, you're just going to make this process take a lot more time and be a lot more painful, and maybe even just compound the issues, more and more. So we want to be aiding ourselves in the easiest ways that we can. And what are the easiest ways that we can aid ourselves? Doing stuff that just we need naturally. You need fucking sleep, man. If you don't get 8 hours of sleep a night, I'm sorry, but you're almost undoubtedly not operating at your optimal level. Do you think that you're going to be more emotional compared to yourself if you got 5 hours of sleep versus if you got 8 hours of sleep? Like, the answer is obvious. All of our emotional states actually get resolved in a way. Okay, maybe not all of them, but sleep is a big part of the healing process, because our subconscious starts to work through our issues during sleep. It's really, really powerful, actually. In fact, many famous scientists, I believe Albert Einstein was perhaps among these, have really attributed a lot of their sort of epiphanies to just thinking about their issues before they went to sleep, and then they wake up and sleep is kind of just presented them with, a very unique way of solving whatever sort of problem that they were thinking of. At the very least, getting 8 hours of sleep will allow you to be more resilient. It'll allow you to be more resilient. The next thing would be, of course, proper nutrition. Now, this is different for everyone. I know for myself, focusing on basically single ingredient foods like ground beef, like eggs, like fruit and berries, these things seem to be pretty damn good for most people. Yes, I'm sure there's some people out there who that'll not work for, but for fuck's sake, if you look at our evolutionary biology, it seems very, very clear to me that the overwhelming majority of people are going to do best on those sort of diets. If you're eating processed food, if you're eating, God forbid, like shit that really isn't even food, basically anything that you couldn't recognize as a single ingredient, you're probably done goofing. You probably done goofed, honestly. And again, do you think your brain is going to be working in its optimal space for eating some highly processed gunk that didn't even exist more than 50 years ago or 100 years ago or even 200 years ago, when your anatomically modern Homo sapien body has been evolutionary used to a diet for over, hundreds of thousands of years? The answer should be obvious. In fact, that's why I think, we have a lot of the issues that we have today is because of all these newer foods that, we just, we're not supposed to eat. Our body just doesn't know how to really handle it properly. Anyways, on top of that, and the third thing, in my opinion, this one is also extremely important, is do some fucking hard physical activity. Seriously. And when I say hard physical activity, no walking bullshit, unless you literally can't do more than that. Walking is fine. It can be okay for some people, sure. But honestly, the key is to get your heart rate up to zone 5, which is really fucking hard. Really fucking hard. Really fucking hard. This is really fucking hard work. I'm not talking about going to the gym and lifting heavy weights, although that can be great too. But even that is easy work compared to anything that's in zone 5. I can assure you that being 4 to 5 minutes in zone 5, 99% of the population can't even do it without some prior training. It takes time, but that is also a really, really powerful signal to your body to interpret threats properly, because that is hard work. When your body deals with real hard physical labor, then the other issues that you may be dealing with seem so much smaller and so much easier to solve compared to that really, really, really nasty physical stimulus. Anyways, I feel like my mic's like about to fall at any moment, but I guess we'll see. Hold on. Probably shouldn't fuck with it too much right now. Anyways, okay, great. So, so like I said, as soon as you can, get outside and do some hard physical activity. And that's really what myself and my gym buddy were talking about. It's like, look, after you experience a terrible event like that, to get back on track as fast as possible is the main goal. Yeah, one day, maybe take that off because it is really difficult on that same day. But the next day, as soon as you can, get out there, do something hard, get a good night's sleep, and get some good food in you, man. And preferably keep that up for the rest of your goddamn life as well. Anyways, at the end of the day, all you have is your health anyways. So again, everything else is borrowed. And ultimately, doing those three things, getting 8 hours of sleep, eating properly, and doing real hard actual physical activity, these things will make you feel significantly better. And outside of your financial situation, it'll just make you, be generally more optimized as a healthy individual, experiencing a better sort of lifestyle and just day-to-day sort of feeling. Anyways, like I said, compound that by just doing that as often as humanly possible. Ideally, there's really no situation where you shouldn't be able to do that. But this will quite literally be the fastest way out of the initial psychological emergency state. That is the way. That is the way. I can assure you of that. I know that my face kind of covered up that last line there, but this will be the fastest way out of that initial emotional shock. And so you can get out of it quite quickly, and then you can actually start to begin the healing and integration process, which is where the real fun is. So the inner reckoning, turning the pain into information. So we'll go into much more detailed examples pertaining to trading and investing after this, but I just want to kind of lay out the groundwork because, again, you can apply this to any major scenario that you might be going through in life. At least that's what I've experienced throughout life. So ask yourself first, what belief or behavior led to this? So this is where we actually have gotten over the initial emotional stimulus, and now we're ready to actually go into the pain and process it. So we need to ask ourselves, like I said, what belief or behavior led to this in the event of many people, myself included, when it comes to trading and blowing up accounts. It's usually something regarding overconfidence, naivety, hubris, these sorts of things, just thinking that you are better than what you actually are. And then a little bit more relevant to trading is that you could ask yourself, what did I think I understood about risk or strategy that turned out to be false? Like, what effectively were you doing? And we need to really admit to ourselves that whatever the fuck we were trying to do before, it actually doesn't work. It actually doesn't, because this is a topic that comes up so often in my live streams where, someone will bring up an idea and they'll be like, where do I buy? And it's like I know nothing about them. I maybe have like one time frame, but of course I have no fucking idea what the hell they're trying to do, because why can I know what they're trying to do? They don't even know what the fuck they're trying to do. So if you don't know what you're trying to do, then guess what? You have no roadmap. You have no roadmap. You have no strategy. And winging it has never worked for anyone over a long period of time. Yes, you might win on a trade or two. Absolutely. That can happen. Any fucking dumb monkey can be right on any particular trade, but it's over time that we need to be successful and correct. And so if you don't actually have a strategy, you have to really internalize the lesson that any strategy, not having any strategy, or especially not following that strategy, and I'm assuming that you've actually backtested and actually a working strategy, because if you haven't even done that, then you don't even have a fucking strategy to begin with. Then you have to really internalize the lesson that you are guaranteed to fail at that point. You are guaranteed to fail if you don't follow the process. It's really that simple. It's really that fucking simple. If you don't follow the fucking process, you are guaranteed to fail. So every time you take a trade without actually having a strategy in the background that has actually been tested in a proper way, which we'll go over later exactly how that looks like, you are guaranteed to fail. You will run into the same event again. You will. I can assure you of that. This is not the only time that we're going to see something like this. In fact, it's not the only time that we've seen it in the past few years. Like, these things happen. All right. And this is basically your descent into the underworld. This is where you actually have to look into yourself and admit that you did wrong. And this is also the place where truth lives, but comfort dies. It's not going to be fucking comfortable. It's not going to be fun. Like, you have to basically admit to yourself that you're a fucking idiot. I'm still an idiot in many ways, but at least figured out this one issue, at least to the best of my ability at this point. Maybe it changes in the future. We'll see. Anyways, let's go over some practical tools. Journaling the event like a case study is very, very helpful. Not like a tragedy, not like feeling sorry for yourself, but literally just going over the case study as to what quite literally happened. You know, this can be a journal about your emotions during the time, what you were thinking during the time, what you expected to happen, what you were quite literally doing. These sort of things are very, very useful to go over to find, you know, patterns. And it just becomes very, very obvious wherever you went wrong when you do this exercise. And then I also want to say that every loss is tuition. But just like school, just because you pay tuition doesn't mean that you're getting a real education. You actually have to put in the work with it. You know, the question is, did you pay for wisdom or for nothing? The wisdom is the lesson that you get from those fuck ups if you actually process it. If you just let it go and make no changes or make no real dedicated changes by going through the full process that we're going to speak about soon enough, you did it for nothing. You did it for nothing, to be quite honest. Again, we will have the same loss in the future, maybe worse, maybe not as bad, but you'll have losses in the future as well. Things won't change. By not making an effort to change, you should not expect different results, in other words. And reflection and integration are hard work. These are really fucking hard work. Almost no one does this. But with hard work comes real change and results. And it is possible to do. I'm not going to tell you that it's easy, but it is possible to do. Take another sip of this water. Okay, so now I'm going to assume here that the people who have listened for this long, you probably actually want to change, or at least you want a roadmap on how to change. So here is the how-to on paying tuition should you decide to continue with trading or investing. So specifically speaking to these, I'm sure that you could apply the same sort of model to other things as well, but I'm coming at this from that perspective. So and again, we'll go through like literal examples after this, but I need to go over, you know, the general sort of idea here. So first, we're going to create a strategy on paper. That strategy must use objective indicators or values that constitute an entry, exit, or risk management as a minimum testing standard. So you need to be able to find these things at minimum. Your entry, exit, and risk management based off of objective signals. That means that you need a signal that there is no question, absolutely, at all whatsoever, if the signal is printing a 1 or a 0. If it's a 1, then we do X. If it's a 0, then we do Y, for example. Again, it gets more complicated than this, obviously, but that's what it really is at its base. So do that for your entry, exit, and risk management. That is the minimum to even just try to test a strategy. If you can't do that, you don't have a strategy. This is why I have a big issue with drawing lines and shit on a chart, because it's not objective. And you can always look at it later on or get another person to look at it, and it's like they'll have a different opinion on it. Whereas if you're looking at an indicator value, yes, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but a 1 is a 1 and a 0 is a 0. And so it's a lot easier for most people to interpret. Again, I'm not saying that you can't make money the other way. Some people do it. More power to you, but I think that they're the overwhelming minority, and even then, I do have my own sort of questions about that. But anyways, that's not my problem. My focus on here is to obtain those objective indicator values or some sort of values that are quite literally just a 1 or a 0, and use that to constitute the conditions necessary for an entry, exit, and risk management. All right, then we're going to test that strategy on paper, or you can use a back tester. I'll show the Quant Prime service right here, of course, because you can use that to back test, you know, basically any strategy that you can really think of, and you get instant results. Obviously on paper, it's completely valid to do there as well, but naturally it's going to take more time, you know, just to do every little iteration yourself. Completely valid. Again, I've done that in the past myself as well. Anyways, then we analyze the historical results, and what sort of results are we analyzing? Well, again, at minimum here, you want to know what is the win percentage of your strategy? What is the likelihood that any particular entry will produce a profitable trade? What are the average win returns for those winning trades? What are the average loss returns for those losing trades? What do we expect to lose on average for every given trade? What is the maximum win that you saw during the testing period? What's the maximum loss that you saw during the testing period? What would be like the first standard deviation of returns that you saw for the winning or losing side as well? and the average amount of time in your trades, both for winning and for losing trades. Getting data on this is super useful. And again, this is a minimum here. You can do significantly more than this. Maybe you want to calculate out medians and whatnot as well. But this gives you a baseline to actually really compare things. And from there, you can decide, is it acceptable to you or not? And in terms of testing for Bitcoin, I like to use like about the last 10 years, or especially from 2017 till present, which is almost 10 years. But basically, if it's a strategy under a daily, more or less, that should be ample amount of time. When it comes to a daily or higher, it could maybe be a little bit on the lower end, very sparse. But again, going through the full history of Bitcoin, I just don't think is super, super helpful, because the earlier years just had such insane returns on both sides that I just don't think it's relevant, because you just can't expect to get that kind of shit anymore. It just doesn't happen, quite literally. Anyways, like I said, next up, interpret the results. Are these acceptable? Are they acceptable? That's a question only you can answer. I don't know if it's acceptable to you. Maybe it is, maybe it ain't. Everyone's different on this, but some people like higher win percentage strategies, but and other people like just higher returns for their strategies. Those two factors almost always are going to be opposite of each other. If you have a super high win rate, usually your average return is going to be a lot lower, and vice versa. This just comes down to your preferences. Either's fine, just needs to be profitable over time, or I would assume you'd probably want that. Anyways, if the results are acceptable, congratulations, you have a base strategy. You can begin trading it on a low value account and build up over time. But you should be looking for further refinements on the base strategy. These will naturally occur to you over time, but that's really the hardest thing. So once you actually have a base strategy, you've done all of the super hard work. Now you just have to execute, and naturally over time, you're going to notice small areas of improvement. It's just anyone with a brain looking at it for long enough will naturally notice those patterns, and you can test those out over time as well and see if you actually do have something that can improve the strategy. If you do, implement that. If you don't, after testing it, then don't, and move on to the next thing. And of course, if the results are not acceptable to you, then repeat the process from step one until they are. All right. And let's now go through some examples here. So I want to show you what a sample trade strategy and checklist could look like. So again, this is super, super basic here, and you can copy this if you want. This is basically the focus of the Krown Trading Bible program. It goes into a lot more depth than this, but I'll just give everyone out the information freely here. And I've done this in past videos as well. I also know that very few people will actually do this. And again, in that program, we go through a very, very detailed way of how to refine this and actually really create a strategy that is relevant to you. But for the people out there who, maybe a little bit more self-motivated, here it is: trade strategy and checklist. So we want to first define what time frame are we trading? Are you trading an hourly? Are you trading a 15-minute time frame? Are you trading a daily time frame? Anyone is fine, but settle on one. You can only test one at a time. Just that fucking simple. What will be used for your main source of edge? So what indicators are you going to be using in order to derive this strategy? What defines a risk management parameter? So what, if present, would define that you need to get out of your trade because it's likely to just lose more over time if you're going to stay in that trade. So this is like, ideally with a risk management parameter, we want to find the point of maximum likelihood to fail, because if and when that value is valid, then we might as well just get out of the trade at that exact moment, because it's just likely to get even worse. And we should, take our money out, take the loss. It's just going to become a bigger loss if we stay in, and get ready for the next potential opportunity. How positions be entered. So this is basically your entry criteria. So, you want to look for objective indicators and values that define, okay, now we have an edge for an entry. Let's go in. Also, you'd want to define if you're going to be long or short. Don't test both at the same time, by the way. Anyways, how positions be exited. This is basically your profit taking. Same thing here as well. And then I also like to include a trade invalidation or caution. This is like random stuff that you may be noticing that makes your setup more likely to fail. So maybe maybe you've gone through the history and you find out, oh shit, it seems like trades that we take on Saturday are really likely to fail. Maybe we should just get rid of trading that day. that's something certainly worth looking at. And I'll give you an example of what this looks like over here in practice. So I filled one out. This is super fucking simple. I'll just go through it right now. What time frame? A 15-minute time frame. What would be used for the main source of edge? I refer to the 15-minute Krown cross uptrend. So that would be the 21 EMA versus above the 55 EMA. On the 15-minute time frame, obviously. Then I would also be using the BBWP indicator and the PMARP indicator. Okay, you don't need to know what these are or what this is, just for argument's sake. What defines a risk management parameter? I'd want to see it ideally a closure below the wick of the range low. Or I could also close below the average percentage loss, which we'll find out later, obviously after testing, or the emergency condition, which would be a wick below the prior trend low. Both of these should be super obvious to define. But again, you can use whatever the hell you want. You could say when the RSI is at X amount, something like that could be fine. Or when the stochastic oscillator crosses in this direction, it's better to just get rid of the trade. Completely fine to do something like that as well. How positions be entered? I want to enter when the PMARP indicator is having a value that is less than 15 and the BBWP is less than 35. And we will only enter after the closure with those two prior conditions satisfied. Just that's them. I mean, again, I'm not saying that this is like the best strategy. The strategy probably won't work, by the way. But just as an argument's sake, this is how you could test something. How positions be exited? Again, whichever happens first. PMARP gets above 75. Okay, I'm getting out. Again, that's a hard value. Like, we know exactly when that happens. It's an indicator value. Or quantitative way, take profit around the win average percentage. You could take a ride on that. Something like that. Trade invalidation or caution. Again, it just must fulfill all conditions for entry. I didn't list anyone here. Now, I'll go over what this would look like if you're testing this one out on pen and paper or on like a Google Sheets. It's not going to be relevant to this particular strategy, but just so that you can see, again, anyone can use Google Sheets. It's free, super simple. You can just fill out, something like this. Again, don't fucking ask me for this because I'm not going to give it to you. Like, literally do the 5 seconds of work that it takes to set this up. Holy shit. I mean, for fuck's sake, like, if you can't even do that, then, like, I don't think, is any of this even worth it? Like, you're not going to do the minimum. Anyways. Define your entry, define your exit. I like to calculate the net gain or loss, and then the percentage gain or loss, which I'm significantly more interested in. Then I like to define, or not I like to, then we define, is it a win or a loss? So on Sheets, I just, do a 1 or a 0, makes it easier to count up. Then the time for taking in the winning trades, and what that value pertains to. So this one would be like 34 days. Time in the losing trades, again, measured in days, you can see. And then the and then the actual win P&L for those winning trades, and then the win percentage over here, loss P&L, and then you do the loss percentage over here as well. Actually, didn't even put it in there, but you get the idea. From there, calculate them out. This is not, by the way, like super. You can see that this is messy and everything. You don't need to be fucking perfect with this. Only you need to understand it. That's fine. I like to look at the average returns for the winning and losing trades. Like I said, I like to look at the first standard deviation, the minimum and the maximum returns for those trades. Also the time in the trades. And anything more on top of that is completely fine as well. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. If you're using something like, the quantum wave bands over here, super fucking easy to set up as well. Again, we're just looking at the long-term history of this, and we want to get testing results very, very quickly. And by the way, you can try out, like, if you're newer and you don't even know what a successful strategy even looks like, check out the quantum wave bands. There's a link in the description below. It is free for 7 days. At the very least, for newer people, it'll give you a strategy that won't get you fucking wrecked because it shows you, where to enter and where to exit. It'll give you high probability entries. And right now I'm actually using a pretty, what I think is a pretty damn good strategy. I mean, this one's been tested now. I mean, we've been watching this for multiple years, and it's been very beautiful. Now, yes, it does take losses, and you naturally will see losses, but seeing these over time, you start to realize, oh shit, okay, it is actually steady over time, so I shouldn't freak out when I get like a month or two of negative returns, because I know that over time, the more and more that I play out this positive edge, it's going to work out in my favor. So you can see that, and you can test things out super, super quickly, and it at least gives you something to base off of. So that's where I'd really suggest something like this. Like I said, the Quant Prime service, that is really intended for like more more advanced people who already have ideas, and then you can test that, get your results really, really quickly. The quantum wave event's more like done for you. The strategy is very static. You can apply some customizations to it, sure, but you know, if you really want to customize things to your heart content, then Quant Prime is the one to do that with. You get those backtesting results nearly instantaneously, or at least compared to fucking writing them out like this. It's certainly instantaneous. Anyways, one more sip of this water. Okay. All right. So you are not your results. You are your process. After you've paid your tuition, which is all of the work that we just spoke about, it is solely up to you and only you to follow the process. This is where you actually need to not just do the work, but now execute that work, which is difficult. But I do personally think that doing that initial work, especially coming from that initial emotional state, is probably the harder part, especially for newer people. Following and executing that plan as it's laid out is difficult for many people as well. But I feel like it's a lot more attainable. Anyone can do the actions. Like anyone can do the fucking actions. You know, it's the same thing as just brushing your teeth. Like, do you like brushing your teeth? No, but you just do it because you know you're supposed to, unless if you want shitty teeth, right? So that's kind of the point here. It's like you can do it even though you don't want to do it, as with anything. Anyways, following the process, in other words, playing out your strategy exactly as it was defined, is the only means in which you actualize your potential and rebuild into success. Literally the only way. It's literally the only fucking way. If you avoid that, you will not get there. Crazy idea. Anyways, failure to follow the process is a one-way ticket to financial Hades and a round trip to a similar style event as the initial catastrophic loss. History will repeat. Like I said, if you think this is the only time that we're ever going to see something like this, you are going to be wrong. You are absolutely going to be wrong. It will happen again to some extent. Maybe a little bit worse, maybe a little bit better, but it doesn't really matter. You're probably going to lose, everything before that happens anyways, because if you don't have a real strategy that is designed to actually know what to do in the moment, you will fuck up in a multitude of different ways, probably even before the next event happens. But those sort of events make it like super obvious for people. That's where like it's just a fucking dagger to the heart, rather than like a million golden, a million BBs. It's like one golden bullet is what it is. But they both get you to the same area. The other, yesterday's event or a couple days ago event is just a faster, way there. So the path is completely within your control, and all you need to do is to take the actions regardless of any externally imposed circumstance. It is really all within your power to do this. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to play out your own strategy. Yes, I understand that some people will be like, well, I feel like I'm addicted to dopamine. I feel like I'm doing this and that. It's like, shut the fuck up, get off the internet, stop self-diagnosing shit that probably doesn't exist. And even if it does, who cares? Because if you ignore it and you just do the actions anyways, you will get the results. You can feel all of those bad emotions. You can feel bad, but still do the right thing. You've done it in other portions of your life. You can do it here as well. So don't make excuses for yourself. And I know that that's maybe unempathetic, and fuck it, maybe it's not. But I can assure you that that quite literally is the way to get out of it, regardless of how you feel. Your feelings do not influence that. It's only you who might let it influence you. And in which case, I will say directly to the men of this channel, because this seems to really resonate well with men. If you do that, in my opinion, and I know this sounds really fucking harsh, but you don't deserve the results because you're being weak. And that's really what it is to grow from this, is to be strong enough to actually do that work and then execute on that work. Anyways, moving on and into our last slide. Integration, turning the scar into armor. So key takeaways here from this presentation: don't erase what happened. Instead, build it into what and who you are. Remember, gold is purified in fire. And of course, diamonds are made through hard pressure. And we want to use these lessons and codify them into systems. When we codify them into systems, we create rules, checklists, trading principles. That's what we're doing over here. That's the work. Again, it's easier said than done, absolutely, and it does naturally take time. But what does Ray Dalio call his book, which I think is an amazing book, by the way? Principles. Principles, because they are principles. You might call it rules or trading principles, checklists, whatever. It's all the same stuff. We create those as a safeguard against whatever sort of external, events may happen, to stay on the course and not fall victim to these events by following our rules. And always remember, the greatest fortunes and the greatest men aren't defined by their wins. They're defined by how they respond when the game burns to ash. So many people have made a shit ton of money in a short amount of time, doing stuff. That's not what makes them great. What makes them great is after the inevitable fall happens, how do they rebuild after that? Because you do have a real shot to change. And losses are temporary. They can be temporary, I should say. Principles are permanent, however, if you do the work. They are permanent. So you can actually gain something that's permanent that will aid you in that sphere of your life. And also you can, use it to build other spheres of your life as well. And honestly, if you've fallen, good. Now the rebuilding begins. That's a real long-term investment. So yes, it can be a stimulus for real change. With a big emotional shock like this, you naturally your psychology should be open to change. If it's not, then well, you might be a psychopath or you might not have gotten hurt enough. Both things very possible. But again, I don't want to make this Pollyanna. It is a potential, but the potential is not realized until you do the work. The work is what we went over here. And from there, from there, once you have your base strategy, then the real work is to execute and remain on the path. And that is all within your volitional control. You can do that. Anyone can do that. And only you can do that. So you cannot rely on external sources. I'm not going to say that you can rely on me. You can't rely on me. I'm going to be doing my own thing, but I can give you the sort of guide here that at least worked for myself, and I believe many other people as well. And it is a potential to rebuild into something even stronger. And I know that it sounds really fucking silly to people who might have lost everything from a very, very high financial position, perhaps the highest financial position that they ever achieved. But I can assure you that because this event was so nasty, that you can turn that into very strong principles that will aid you for life. Anyways, we will end the video on that note. I want to wish everyone the best of the best. I'll continue to make videos in this series, this long-term investing series. And if you're interested in that, like and subscribe. I always forget to say that, but all good. Yeah. And other than that, we'll see you in the next one. Take care.